largest city-owned park, and again we have to say it, anywhere in the world. Independence Hall, where you were born free and guaranteed a free press, newspapers, both great and small. So you'll come to learn not only the geography of your city, but its essential character as well. In the shadow of the new, the heritage and dignity of the old. The theater, like you, one of Philadelphia's growing children. There, for example, the Walnut Theater, the nation's oldest, but playing the latest hits. Someday you may play football at Franklin Field, or at least root them on from the stands. For in this town, there's always something to help you stop crying. To stand up and cheer instead. Connie Mack Stadium, named for a man whose name will never be forgotten in Philadelphia or the Baseball Hall of Fame. Sunday morning, a time of repose, if not of rest. And we're on our way to give our thanks for the many, many blessings we enjoy. A quiet Sunday. And a happy new year. The Mummers Parade, the grandfather of all spectacles, costumes that have been a year in the making, costing many thousands of dollars apiece. Wild, weird, but above all wonderful. The Mummers are on parade. This is accomplished largely by ideas, flashing in the night of complacency and ignorance. Since 1932, WPTZ has been sharing the lives of the people it serves, helping them find a better way of life. This proud tradition of service and responsibility has grown through the years, as indeed our city has grown with its sense of pride and accomplishment. A sign that flashes in the dark as a medium of communication. Aren't all we have to offer you. This city is rich in many ways. Fairmount Park, the largest city-owned park, and again we have to say it, anywhere in the world. Independence Hall, where you were born free and guaranteed a free press, newspapers, both great and small. So you'll come to learn not only the geography of your city, but its essential character as well. In the shadow of the new, the heritage and dignity of the old. The theater, like you, one of Philadelphia's growing children. There, for example, the Walnut Theater, the nation's oldest, but playing the latest hits. Someday you may play football at Franklin Field, or at least root them on from the stands. For in this town, there's always something to help you stop crying. To stand up and cheer instead. Connie Mack Stadium, named for a man whose name will never be forgotten in Philadelphia or the Baseball Hall of Fame. Sunday morning, a time of repose.
Good evening, everybody. If it's 8 o'clock on Tuesday evening, it is the Reality Report. We welcome you to Bridgeton, New Jersey via Arlington, Virginia. Tonight, I'm with my regular and special co-host and guest, Dave.
All we have to offer you. This city is rich in many ways. Fairmount Park, the largest city-owned aren't all we have to offer you. This
There we go. All right, we're good. Yeah, we're good. Now, hopefully you're fine.
Is that?
All right, Dave. I just want to double check volume. Okay, just say anything and we're good.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Okay. I just want to make sure the volume. Everybody, if you would, you can post in the comments section to make sure that you can hear us. We are using a lot of bandwidth tonight, and Dave and I have practiced. Hello, CB. Anthony.
Hey,
CB,
Anthony.
and there we go.
Hey, we could just do this
All
all
right.
night.
Just say hello to everybody. All right.
CB.
So if you would, folks, if the volume's all right, just put a plus sign on the comment section, and then I should be okay. And then I know that we can keep going.
The other thing we is knock on your door. Just look for the big blue light. It's not the cash. So
Right.
track you after.
All right. I'm
Thanks.
going to minimize.
That helps a lot.
Here. Okay. We've got all pluses here. Now, Dave, you may lag in that audio. Don't worry about it.
Oh, no. I've worked on here on my kind of special programs. I'm watching that and just talking. It's fine.
All right. That's good. All right. So, good evening, everybody. As I said at the beginning of the show, we appreciate you being here. And I also appreciate, Anthony, that you've been sharing this to Twitter and to your friends. Anthony, you're a great fan of ours, and we really appreciate everything that you do. And that brings up a point that, again, we don't monetize this program, nor will we, but we do appreciate when you subscribe to the channel. That means the YouTube channel, or you become a member of Divided We Stand. And Chris Dave has his blog, and you can check it all out on our Facebook page. But we do ask that you, even if it means one person, you can get one person to subscribe or become a member of our Facebook page. We'd really, really appreciate that, because we want to make this thing grow. And as always, we will listen to you, and we will have an interactive show as usual. So we really, really appreciate it. And thanks, CB, for sharing it to ECH. We see CB says that you're breaking up a little bit, Dave.
Okay, let me talk a little bit, and we'll see if I'm still breaking up. Let's see. Wasn't born in a log cabin. Let's see. What was I? I was born in 1952, and that makes me, according to my math, 68 years old. And to keep this topic alive, when we talk about anything like Donald Trump in my 68 years on the planet. So that's why what we're going to do tonight is talk a little bit about Donald Trump and how he fits in the world or doesn't fit into the world, and basically try to present information why Donald Trump should be shown the exit door at the White House, hopefully never to return, even as a visitor.
Okay. All right, so Dave, I'm going to try to get this background off of here, Dave. It's a little bit too wild.
Well, the reason is you shot that 70s, or, you had that problem with chemicals, but that's okay.
Okay. So, thank you. Looks like we're better now. We're catching up to the bandwidth, and we're on right now with the Environmental Coffee House, because CB has shared that there. So CB, touchdown. We really, really appreciate it. Tonight, I want to bring up 2 points, and they basically are the 2 big events for this week, as everybody knows. One, we've been hearing a lot about Trump and Putin. Putin, obviously, or apparently, according to the New York Times, Washington Post, ABC News, NBC News, put out a bounty on American and foreign forces in Afghanistan. And Trump, of course, says he was not aware of this. That's what he says. And today, of course, he met at the White House with only Republicans, and they stated that it was noted by the intelligence services, but it didn't reach quite a level that it should have gotten to Donald Trump. But there were no CIA people there and blah, blah, blah. So that's the first thing, and we'll talk about that. And the second thing, Dave, I just want to briefly say, we're going to talk about the pandemic, in that a change has occurred. The pandemic, the increase in infection rates and deaths are now in the South, which means basically the Republican states, and we've seen a turnaround on how Republican politicians are treating that. So without any further ado, we're going to go to our political expert from Arlington, Virginia. That's David Price.
Do we bring another guest in? Who the hell's a political expert
Dave,
here?
we don't have to go into this, but I don't know if you remember back in March, Bill Barr and the DOJ had dropped charges against 2 Russian firms allegedly trying to rig the 2016 election for Trump. Dropped the charge. About this time, this apparently is about the time that Putin puts on the bounty, which I find in itself a strange coincidence, which is going on here. But all in all, I don't even know where you want to begin with this, because it certainly seems plausible that Putin would do this. But whatever Trump did, whether he was not aware of it or he was aware of it and didn't do anything, that could be a sticky situation for him, could put him in prison in my mind. What thinks you?
All right. One of the great questions when Trump began is, what was his connections to Russia? Right? I mean, when I say began, I mean when he glided down that, whatever that was, the escalator down, hey, I'm here to solve problems. Here we are toward the end of what will hopefully be a one-term presidency, and we're back with the same, we're gone away. So this one, though, if you're asking me, as a liberal, as a leftist, as a 1960s peacenik, but as someone who's always felt that we owe a tremendous obligation to the men and women who fight for us. I'd love to live where we didn't need soldiers, a world where we don't need policemen. We don't live in that world, and I would hold them accountable. Certainly, we know that there have been atrocities committed by American servicemen over the years. But the idea of the president is not only a commander-in-chief and protectorate of America. I think another job is to protect the troops who are the protectorate of America. So let's look at what apparently happened, or what we think has happened. Now, of course, we have to preface this all by, if you're a stone believer in Donald Trump and a member of the Donald Trump cult, it's very simple. I those news organizations, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, and if you just dismiss them all. Look, I was a reporter for a fairly long time. I've been a writer even longer. You risk your career to make a very serious allegation, directly or indirectly, against the President of the United States without having what you believe is enough evidence to go. Now, people don't understand it. I don't mean to insult anyone, but there's an insider to every business. And one of the insiders to journalism is you have to have sources. So I just want to talk about that for a minute. Sources are people who come to you and basically say, when I say come to you, come or you seek them out, they will say, tell this, but you can't use my name. Now, why don't they want their name used? Well, there's two possibilities, many, but basically one, retro extend out, and the other is they're playing you, and they don't want their name used, so it doesn't fall back on them, and they're giving you misinformation, and there you are stuck. Right? I refer people tonight. It's a very involved story, but what should I say? I hate to use interest in the sense, but interest in journalism. Marty Barron is a tremendous editor from Boston Globe, now with the Washington Post. With Spotlight, brought to light, literally, the sexual abuse in Boston. He's now in Post, and the story was breaking this week, talking about it. If only journalists were really listening. Bob Woodward is, Watergate, with Carl Bernstein. Woodward, he asked Woodward to hold off. Woodward had a story about, and we'll see how good you are, Brian, about the latest Supreme Court justice. Who would that be?
Okay, you'll have to repeat that again. You're talking Bob Woodward is this current
No, no.
Bob Woodward or back in
Bob Woodward
'74?
had a story involving using a source, and that source was the most recently appointed justice of the Supreme Court. Do you know who that is?
Well, that's obvious. That would be Brett Kavanaugh.
And Kavanaugh did is he not laws, but a number of things when he was working in the Clinton impeachment, right on the other side. And Woodward used him as a source, and Woodward found out some interesting things about him and wanted to use him. And Marty Barron said no, you can't, because that would break the idea a source is protected forever. Brian, I've lost everything, but I assume we're still on, correct?
We are,
there we are.
Still on.
Okay, so what happens is not be identified got sources, high-ranking sources. Notice they'll sometimes people who should know, they give all these. They said is the following: Russia, Putin, offering bounties, somewhere from March, nothing. Absolutely. See, we're breaking. Could be my voice. So, to it is Trump. There's two conflicting coming out. One is did nothing. Is that no? Well, Brian, I'm going to submit that either.
Correct.
I actually here in Washington a real government, and if that's true, Trump should
Correct.
Probably, but the is almost more frightening. Given that he should have didn't. Well, people know that he doesn't read. I'm not saying he can't read. We don't know. We know that he doesn't read. He doesn't like it. So somebody should have followed that up. Or people close to him realized that wouldn't do or wouldn't do the right thing. So how to have a president who knows that there is a balance and does nothing, or who we understand the information is not giving, or fear that he'll do something foolish with either one person to be president. So I'll stop there. I mean, I don't think there's a whole way to exonerate Donald Trump in this. Believe that the story itself, no of the story is true. Because if any part of the story is true, then Donald Trump failed to do one of his major, which is to protect the United States from enemy, foreign, and domestic.
Okay. Dave, you made great points, and I actually agree with you, because either way, it looks like he's in deep doo-doo from what he's done. He can't get out of it. However,
for a moment, Ryan, the interesting thing when you say he's in deep doo, you're right.
well, in a sense, he's going to be caught, but
How? Well, I'm just saying, it comes back to we have 1/3 of the American people will follow him. You know, petty song that the petty found not use won't back down.
Right.
And there's a line there. Follow to the gates of hell. Well, his will do that. So I mean, yes, I'm playing a little bit semantical there, but yes, it was in deep due to the day was born. You know, but the question is, are there enough?
Well, this is where I'm going to interject here for a second. Hopefully that
Sure.
phone stops ringing. Right. So I guess what I'm saying is, just like any other thing, Dave, that he's kind of been cornered with. He's been a rat in so many different situations where you say, we got him. Emoluments, Mueller, any one of the situations, Stormy Daniels. But you look at what happened at the White House today. They didn't invite any Democrats, which I found had a terrible odor to it. And then, of course, this Imhoff from Alabama basically says that, the president didn't receive the information because it didn't reach to a level of something that was that important. Never had an intelligence person there at the
Stop
meeting.
for a minute there. Again, I think we need to follow that point. I don't know if Jesus is real and comes down to that. Determining there's a level.
Right.
If you have allegations of any type, bounty is being placed on American troops, the president has to be made aware of it.
Right, and maybe he was. Maybe
he studied it. Now, the other thing I saw today, I wish this was my original. I wish it was original with me, but it's not. They said all intelligence is speculative. So you bring it down. All these reports you get, that's the idea. You bring them to the president. Something that's serious. Sorry,
well, absolutely. Again, but that's not even my point. I think the point I'm trying to zero in on is that, like all the other situations, especially with the impeachment hearings and with the Mueller investigation, the Republicans always came to his side. We've been obviously talking about Trump here, and you've mentioned his voters. But in this case, the White House specifically did not invite the Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee. They just invited the Republicans, and then they make a statement to back him up. So no matter what, literally, no matter what. Now, I'm going to bring in some historical references here, and it relates to Putin.
Okay.
Now, this is going to be, you're going to find this strange, Dave, but you know that I study Russian every day. From time to time, I read Russian reports. So 2 days ago, I was reading the testimony of someone named Kate Hauserman. She was the dental assistant who did Hitler's teeth, right?
Right.
And many of us may not remember, but for 8 years, between 45 and 53, at Stalin's death, Stalin purposely hid the knowledge that they had Hitler's teeth. I mean, when they had her give testimony, they had her draw out his teeth and his fillings as she remembered it, because he had poor teeth. And what she recollected matched up exactly with the jaw that the Russians were able to preserve from the burnt body. So it was exact.
There, right.
And they knew that. And Stalin wanted to frustrate the West by not telling them. In fact, they didn't know until long after. And even after that, it wasn't until the 1990s that they got all of the information, in terms of what actually was done in the testimony, blah, 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 blah. So, long story short, the Russians are good at lying about this kind of stuff. And it reminded me exactly of Putin. Of course, Putin is denying it. And that's, of course, to Trump's favor, because he can say, look, Putin says he didn't do it. And now we're saying even if we did receive it, it doesn't reach a level. And again, this is where I say it almost doesn't matter what comes down the pike. it's not even Trump. It's these people, and this will relate to the next topic about the pandemic. How the Republicans are kind of changing their tune, but it's so frustrating because this used to, I mean, all of my life, and this is where we're the same. Even though we're 9 years apart, Dave, we're still from that same ilk, that same generation that remembers anything Russia did, we didn't trust. We didn't trust Russia. And who didn't trust them the most? And that was the Republican Party. They just didn't trust the Russians. Now, no matter what happens, they're there to defend it. And I see the same behavior from Putin that we got from Stalin and Lavrentiy Beria, who was the head of secret police, who, by the way, was hung with a rope. And yeah, and it's the same Russian behavior. They're going to deny and deny and deny. But in this case, Trump himself knows whether he got the information or not. It's either he did or he didn't.
He got it. He got it. Okay. Now, he got it. There's no question in my mind. Now you say, how do you know, Dave? I can't swear to, but I just many good sources with too many good reports bringing that. So I believe. So it comes around. I'll say some. What am I looking? Look, it's clearly obvious. All right, here's what's clearly obvious. Donald Trump won the presidency. Donald Trump ran as a Republican. He could have run as a Democrat. He could have run as a Zoroastrian if they were one of the. It's all about Donald Trump anyway. So they would join hands, link, if you will, whatever, and they'll ride this together. Why would they turn on Trump? They're in trouble, not as the country changes and evolves a little bit here and does some other things. Trump is so much than he was in 2016. Of course, he's going to call it in. Of course, they're going as the guy from Iowa, the guy
Jim Jordan
covered up all the.
And by the way, Imhoff is the greatest global warming denier in the country.
I understand that. They're all related. The thing is, here's the simple thing for everybody listening tonight. Look, Trump got impeached. There will be against him for that impeachment because the impeachment decided in the Senate, Democrats control the House, and the Republicans control the Senate. A report completely damaging. Nope. So, one thing that Trump has faced in his 4 years, Brian, is an election.
Not specifically election, because you can't count 2018. He sees the writing on the wall.
No, don't go there.
Right.
Don't go
right.
there.
Yes, absolutely. He has not seen an election.
He has not. Now
he can't. Well, he can't really control that.
The question becomes on November, Tuesday in November. I believe it's the first Tuesday.
3rd of November 3rd.
Right. It's not going to believe that November 3rd. We, the American people, every one of us, gets to. Donald's done a good president more years. Or wants to say, Donald Trump, you've been a president. We don't want you for our president in the next 4 years. Now, speaking of your boy Putin, what he's going to be, he's now. I think it's
Still 2030.
20 or 20, is it 2030 or
2030? 2030.
2030. All right, so we don't have that kind of thing here yet, right? Now, Donald Trump would love it.
Right.
Look, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a sociologist. I'm not that. But I look at the man, and he doesn't look right. And that purple, wonderful wall, which will live in infamy after ego was dismissed at the rally in Oklahoma. That said volumes. A TV was the constant. That was how Trump really felt. That not least knew he. So, I don't have any miracles. There's no smoking gun. My God, there are at least, and I could go back and count them, at least 15 people rid of Donald Trump as president. I've already been not to be that way. So here we are. Hear this a lot. Oh, this is the election of our lifetime. If Donald Trump is reelected, if he is, we can pretty much end feelings we had about America goodbye.
Right.
Unless you are a racist, unless you think that Donald Trump may make you some or conned you and duped you. So, how many of those people are? We'll know a third. Should he be tried for? I believe he will. He be? Not.
And I certainly would hope that when all this is over, that Biden doesn't get comfy with the Republicans and say, let bygones be bygones, and I'll be like,
here's the problem, though, Brian.
That would really set me off against Biden if he did that. And you too.
But no. Came to getting revenge on Donald Trump, doing what's right for the country. Which would you take?
I think they're both the same thing, though.
You can't do that.
Then you're telling me that they are inverse in relationships.
I'm asking
if in fact it was the best thing for the country.
In other words, if you did this, you get revenge on Donald Trump, whatever this is. But it wouldn't be good for you. But if you did this, you get no revenge on Donald Trump.
Okay, given that choice, yes, I would do that. But I wouldn't automatically say that there's an inverse relationship between the two. Because they didn't have to do that for Nixon.
What do you do? Think what people are going to say, Brian. Okay. I said a now. I had one.
Well, let's go through a scenario, Dave, in which that would mean something.
Okay. It's already happened in American history. Richard should have been crucified, right?
Correct.
And what Ford do?
He pardoned him.
And it cost him the presidency.
Correct.
But he fight America at that moment. We were so divided, have been holy hell. And guess what? Richard Nixon rose again. All right.
But another Richard Nixon came about, and you can't keep playing with it.
What are you going to do? You're going to say anybody who's a Republican?
Look, my point is this. It's, at some point, look, people didn't like General Sherman, but he did what he had to do, and he did the right thing to stop it. Now, that was a nasty thing, but he did the right thing. He ended
how does that compare? Won the war, so that was good for
Well,
America.
I'm saying that in the long run, what's good for America is to put his ass under the fire. And you can't always say that.
No, I'm not saying that's not America. What's best interest of America is to make sure out there that Mitch McConnell's who are out there, that the Republican Party who's
will know that they'll pay.
That are racist are
that they'll know that they'll pay if they pull the shit again.
They pay. They re-elect.
That's not enough. I want interest. I want to be paid back in interest. That's right. They made us pay. They should pay too.
They made us. Okay. What you're going to get is an eye for an eye. There's a difference.
Just do what the law is. You know, if he's guilty, do it.
The law applies in a certain to the president of the United States.
When would it be in the best interest of the United States to let this schmuck pardon Roger Stone? Tell me how that's in the best interest.
It isn't. Mm-hmm. Best interest is sure that he.
No, I say that's why you put him away.
And you can't. For president.
No, I understand that, but the Southern District of New York, you got to keep going at him.
Well, that of course, the moment becomes a private citizen. The very moment.
Then we're on the same page with that. We need to clarify that because that's what I'm talking about.
If Joe Biden,
no pardons.
No.
Well, that's all we need. Then that's in the bed. No pardons for the.
Oh, you didn't.
Right.
I don't want them to play Republicans. That means is you'll just have her. There's
no, I didn't mean that. I just don't want them to let Trump off the hook.
Look, you really think for all the people that everybody's the hook?
Dave, I just don't know anymore. You know,
Republicans will let him off. Look, there's good guys and bad guys. The good guys as people not Trump supporters, who aren't Republican Trump supporters, who aren't conservative Trump supporters. The key thing, they're against Trump. Right? But same people than we have tonight saying that we're not the good guys. Right? So this divide we have is not a political divide anymore. It's a moral divide, a cultural divide. It's old ways versus new ways. So there's only two ways. Control really judges who really had this being appointed to make sure others sometimes, but I can't go and say that's what we're gonna do. You got to say okay. What about if you really think they don't know? They're going to be the ones who are looking at a couple deals, okay? Because whoever has the power holds it. Much better to have, better have 100-0 vote than 51-49. So I mean, I said so. If I misunderstood, I'm not saying. There.
All right, good. Because I think that's. I mean, we were in the same ballpark. We're on a different base there. Okay, I get it now. I misunderstood you. You misunderstood me. That's fine. But it's clarified.
One of the things you have to take an alert is the American by vote 100 million vote decide that Biden the right. That is, and now the Democrats possess something they haven't possessed for 4 years. That's now. Donald Trump is a buffoon. Trump is a nap. Donald Trump is all those things. He may not like Joe. He may not be here. Maybe haven't being president. But I will say this: people know like Joe Biden. This person there and what he's been through, what you think of it, and you believe you were for Joe Biden and thought would best president gone and to choose between Trump. Biden better than Trump. That's virtually everything. But one of the things is he does know the system. Trump did not know the system. he did one in who knew the system, right? Trump does not know the system. Trump was, if you will, after Roy Cohn died, and he's been his everything, and it's Trump's way. Biden. So I'm not saying you go in with it. Yeah, that happened. You know, if the will be a thorny to win. It's to me, it's not about the Democrats winning. It's about getting trounced. And gave up with any Republican, Mitch McConnell, gave up who they are, moral, ethical, social standing over the figures.
But Dave, I just want to cut in, folks. I know we have some bandwidth issues. We've had it the last 2 nights. Don't worry in the end, because this is always recorded and I can upload it later. So just hang in there. We're fighting this bandwidth issue, Dave, and it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, basically, ladies and gentlemen, for everyone. Money, but I send me money anyway, and just blame.
Well, for those of you, I mean, I think they can hear me. I have around 40 megabits of uploading bandwidth, which is a lot.
Brian, quit
it. But it just does say that at any one time we'd have a demand of 7, and we're outputting 5, so it's a little bit tough. In any case, just
say this: you don't have enough length. Satisfied. That's really what you're saying.
All right.
Okay. Like that's nothing.
Only you would know, Dave. All right. Let's. We have plenty of them. Okay. Let's go through the comments and questions. Some will be with the bandwidth, but I can separate those.
No bandwidth.
All right.
Okay. That's fine. I mean,
okay. Just a comment here from Anthony. Trump is still saying stand against Antifa and drain the swamp. It never ends. Anything you want to say about that? That's
okay. Into the past. He got him into office. That was the most divisive in my life. He is divisive in my life. Be real as the president in my life. There's nothing new. He hasn't, he's still saying the same things he said. That surprised me. The one thing that I do think people have to understand, though, in elections is Donald Trump lost the advantage he had going. The big advantage was political record. I think we forget that sometimes. Trump is the first president in American history ever won an election or been in an election a military leader. So he came in with this slate. As you just pointed out, you said you're going to do this, you didn't do it. You're going to do this, you didn't do it. Or I don't like the way you did that is around him. And the second thing is no disrespect to Mrs. Clinton. No Biden. A great thing I was watching just before I came looking now, his phone calls, right? And talking about how demeaning he was to every female that he dealt with. Watching this out there. And I mean, I think it's, come on, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is Joe and Trump. And so I'm not voting for a woman between two men. I'll be grateful for the day when it's two women.
All right. Okay, let's go through. Here are a couple quotes from Politico. The president has probably come to that grim realization in recent days. Multiple people close to him told Politico amid the mountain of bad polling and warnings from some of his staunchest allies that he's on course to be a one-term president, end quote.
Here's my math. If Donald Trump were a Republican, he would go to the party. Donald Trump will not resign the presidency as of 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, or any morning between now and the end. That is not nature. There are political that are played off. The section of, when I say the Republican Party, I'm talking about the deal makers, the big guys. Do they want him gone? Absolutely. So they're planning these, and it's back and forth. I actually heard a guy who does a far better job, David Parkman, kind of does what we do, but he does it alone. So David tonight, and I'm going to kind of him a little bit. He said his take, and I would agree with it. People trying to get Trump to come up a solution would be for him, and the thing I don't think he will be the. But let's speculate. Let's take that to the next thing. What happens if Donald Trump wins?
Well, it's kind of scary because you've got Pence there, and that's an issue.
So we got that part. Pence takes over the presidency.
Right.
So if Donald Trump resigns before his term expires, what happens? What happens to the candidacy? President.
Well, that's interesting because you only have 4 months to really get a campaign going, and if you think about it,
there's nothing. You have to choose someone. There's nothing. Law says you are as president by your.
Well, then they would go with somebody who's more to the center just to try to stay in there. I mean, it would be a death spiral for them.
That's true, right? So no. This would be would he automatically be the nominee? I don't even say he would be the nominee.
Mm-hmm.
Why do the people that know in the Republican Party who aren't Trump cultists realize, along with Donald Trump, by linking themselves to Donald Trump, they would love for him to step. Okay? What they're saying is, basically, the people that we have a better shot with any president to step aside. Lyndon Johnson chose to step aside himself, right? There's people who've chosen not to run for a second term, but you don't do that. I mean, so I just want to, people have a tendency to assume certain things, and I understand it. So they assume that Pence would be the nominee and would be Pence against Biden. That's not the case if Trump were to withdraw. So I think there's also going to be people urging him not to do that because that throws the party in disarray. Mm. Because if you don't back Pence, so again, to me, everything points to Donald Trump being the candidate and winning or losing on November 3rd.
Okay, I think I've got some help with the bandwidth here. So I think going on, we may be okay. I was able to lower something.
Get a couple other questions.
Anybody we have comments, which I think I should read.
Fine, put comments up. Put them up from different people. Just
so Rudy,
hey
Rudy, Zavedno says Rudel Zavedno says Biden said to a group of black kids, "I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. Kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down and then watch my hair come up again. So I learned about roaches, kids jumping on my lap and love jumping on my lap. What the fuck? Orange is one's crazy, but this is beyond man." I don't know anything about that. Do you?
Well, here's what you got. Okay, Rudy, I don't know you. I mean, so I'm going to respond this way. I always take it that everything you just said is true. Okay? I mean, I don't know it's not. So I just look at it. If that were true, would I rather have Joe Biden doing that way in the past or Donald Trump doing what he did today? And I'll take Joe Biden's bad past over Donald Trump's present and future any day of the week. Now, I'm not an apologist for Joe Biden. But Donald Trump's biggest problem overall in life is a complete and utter narcissist. He is a classic case. We will never in our lifetime, hopefully again, even see anyone close to the presidency that has his narcissism. Having said that, that makes him automatically a bad president. Joe Biden may be a lot of things, touchy-feely, all that kind of stuff. But I think he's had deaths in his family, his wife, his child, some other things that certainly has made him compassionate and human. Secondly, for Joe Biden, it could have been, I wasn't there, unfortunately, no, they don't call me down here and ask me for decisions. Probably that's a good thing. America might be in tremendous trouble. But I will say this, Barack Obama thought enough of Joe Biden to bring him on as his running mate. Was there a balance? Of course. Barack Obama couldn't have brought on a black woman or a black man or whatever. Joe Biden, from Delaware, Eastern person, Obama from Illinois. I mean, there was all that stuff. But neither one of them are that good actors. I think they really enjoyed each other's company and really looked to function as a team. And I'm going to go with Barack Obama on this one. I think Barack Obama is a damn good judge of character. And I'll just make one decision. He's certainly married up. Michelle is a tremendous person. All right. So they're the kinds of things when people say, well, I'm just going to say, okay, fine. My question to you is who makes the better president? I don't care what they did in their past. I care what they're going to do beginning in 2020. That's all.
All right. A little bit of, I don't want to say arguing within the chat room there about that topic we just spoke about. So I'm going to just kind of leave that and go on.
Brian, I'll just address that while you're looking for something. I think, a lot of people, and this is understandable, they want the America that they want. All right. And especially if you are a believer in the Bernie Sanders / Elizabeth Warren model, neither candidate, is necessarily going to deliver that. But let's look whose party that is. I'm going to say that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are going to have a lot more impact on Joe Biden because he's a Democrat than they would on Donald Trump. So again, we're back to this idea of who gets you closer to what you want.
Okay. A few more comments, questions. Anthony, actually we have quite a few more, but Anthony, this is Anthony Davis. Who should Trump release from prison to get reelected? Does he have the power to pardon anybody? I mean, that whistleblower. I don't think I don't think he would pardon the whistleblower, but he would pardon Roger Stone. You think if Roger Stone has to report to prison on the 12th of July, don't be surprised on July 9th. That means over a week from now, he'll be pardoned.
Okay, let's look at that, Brian. And I'm just saying, let's suppose Trump pardons Roger Stone.
Right.
What does that gain him politically? Show me any
nothing on this side. In fact, it does nothing, but he does a favor for Trump.
Where he's cornered
for Stone.
Where he's really cornered is this one. He can't lawyer his way out of. He can't buy his way out of. He can cheat his way out of, right? But there's nothing that he can do. And basically, he's so out of touch. Look, law and order is an important consideration right now. But that's something I want to address a little bit later. The idea of whose law and whose order is changing. Mm-hmm. And so, Trump is out of touch. I mean, it's amazing. He was in touch 4 years ago to the point that it amazed me that he won. He tapped into something that was there. But that there has just stayed there. There's no more there to tap into. Nobody's making ads from the Democrats saying, please elect Donald Trump. But you've got the Lincoln Project. Right. You've got others. No incumbent president is saying, please reelect Donald Trump.
And that's going to tie in with really the last comment before we go to the next topic, where Anthony says, does Trump have an ace in the hole? Now, we all know that Bill Barr is an ace in the hole for him. I mean, but who is the big ace in the hole? Do you see any ace in the hole for him?
Yeah. I want to disabuse you of your Bill Barr theory. As long as Trump is president, Bill Barr is a card he can play. I don't disagree with you there. Bill Barr, for whatever reason, again, one of those people sold his soul for not even for rock and roll. I don't know what for. But the day Donald Trump stops being president, Bill Barr is nothing but an albatross because you were the attorney general of a defeated candidate, right? Mm. The ace in the hole, yeah, he does. We know them. Putin.
It's all Chinese Barr, the McConnell.
No. They can't help him now, Brian. They can't help him. They can when that voting takes place, they've done all they can do. the scary part is, if all the dictators in the world decide they're going to get involved because they want America to fail equally, that's pretty tough. But even there, all I can tell people is, look, if you got to vote. I hope you vote against Donald Trump. And if you go out there that day and you get in line at 8 a.m. and you're still in line at 8 p.m., you got to stay there. I'm sorry, one day a year to save your country is not asking a lot. One day, now, interestingly, do you go out and vote if the pandemic is worse? I will not question anyone, who makes another decision.
Okay, well, I don't want to go to the pandemic yet because I'm going to go there in a second. But there is
one thing. Unless I just want to say about this vote, just about the vote.
Okay.
Unless I know that walking out the door, I will die, I'm going to go out the door to vote against Donald Trump. Now that's me. I can't say anybody else should do that, but I think it is that important.
Okay.
The only reason I would not go out the door to vote is if I knew going out the door I would kill my 2 grandchildren and I would survive. Okay. Short of that, which is an impossibility.
Now, Rudel Zavedno, I always call you Rudy anyway. But it says Rudel, I guess, so you'll have to excuse me if I mispronounce. You've been on our program many times. But I wanted to, before I read this out loud, one of my favorite YouTube channels, of course, is In Mendham. I do want to say he says something, or he said something recently that I kind of am attached to, and that is that I don't like fence sitters. Like, David Price is the last person to sit on the fence. And this is, Dave, you know how I feel about you with this. Dave, on his personal page, he tells you he doesn't care if his friends say this. He will say, fuck you. It doesn't matter. He'll never be on a fence. He'll be the one guy to yell out. He's the one guy I know, if there were a bad situation, he would speak out. I mean, and that's to Dave's credit. He lives that way. He'll die that way. And we're kind of alike in that. And he knows that. But I'm talking about Dave right now. And Rudel, I'm not calling you a fence sitter, but I know a lot of people who won't vote for Biden, who are on the far left. And Dave, spoke about this probably 3 or 4 times the last 3 or 4 shows about the far left, the Bernie bros. And I have always seen them as what Mendham calls the fence sitters. And the thing about Mendham, he said recently, those are the ones you got to go after first and get them out of the way because they do you no good. Now, Rudel, don't take this personally, okay? I know where you're coming from when you make this comment here. But, let's just go to the comment, okay? Because I appreciate it. He said, Biden should drop prosecution of Julian Assange and stop government's harassment of Chelsea Manning. So already I know where that's coming from. That is coming from the very progressive part of the Democratic Party.
Fine, Brian.
Okay.
Now, let's look at that comment. I'm a writer, a very poor writer. Sometimes I speak, and sometimes I'm very poor communicator. Biden should drop.
I'll put it up again.
Yeah, no, Biden should drop. All right, can he drop it now? No. Should he drop it? I agree. When can he drop it? When he's president. So there's the leap of faith, okay? There's the leap of faith. If you believe that Julian Assange is being harassed, and you believe that Chelsea Manning is being improperly persecuted, and I think there's validation for both of those views, then here's the question you have to ask yourself. Will Donald Trump do either of those 2 things? And the answer is no, right? So you put Trump aside. The question is there somebody who runs, now this is where it gets tricky, is there someone who run, and they're the only 2 campaign pledges that they make, right? Could happen. Then you have to ask yourself this, can that person win? So you say, I don't know, I'm going to look at this other guy, because it looks like Biden, it's going to be a 2-man race. Then you have to ask yourself, should, would, could, has Biden, and again, I'm speaking somewhat in ignorance, but by knowledge, he hasn't spoken that he wouldn't do or what he would do on those issues. So to me, that's an open book. Now we're back to, and then you have to vote your conscience. I mean, I don't know what else. I think too many people in America today, and I can't speak to America 100 years ago. I wasn't here. I can't speak to America 100 years in the future because I won't be here. But I can speak to America today. And I think too many people want it all in this. They want the candidate that they want to do everything that they want to do. And you know how you get to do that? You run and win. And even then you're compromised. So the idea of it is, to me, is you look at, I wish it were a 12-person race. I said earlier, I'll stay to that. I think we'd be far better off in America tonight. And I don't think there's anybody out there who could dissuade me from this. If you look at the most brilliant leaders today in the world, what do they share in common? They are females. They are females. Okay. The best world leader right now is running New Zealand. Okay. And Germany's Merkel's doing pretty well. I mean, the list goes on. I'm not saying, but I think again, I think we're not. This show's not about that. However, having said that, we have a two-man race, and Joe Biden isn't going to do everything I want him to do, but Joe Biden is going to do many of the things I want him to do. So there's that. The other side of that is Donald Trump is the worst human being to be president of the United States, which automatically made him the worst president. Heaven, hell, God, Gilgamesh, I don't care, help us. If America ever gets someone worse than Donald Trump, man, I prefer not to be here. I don't want any of my progeny to be anywhere near that.
Also, I'd like to add, I know what you're saying. I mean, look, I don't have a problem if getting rid of the heat on Assange. I mean, Assange himself, you can forget about what's happening with the United States. He still has to deal with Sweden and those other issues. But I don't know that that's, again, Rudel, I don't know that is the big issue. I think that what Dave is saying, you're not going to get anything from Trump anyway, number one. And I keep going into Russian history, but I have to because I kind of see how things work. And I go back to the Russian Revolution. And, after or during World War I, Russia started doing well in the war, but then later the Germans were encroaching. And then Lenin saw it out. He said, you know what? I don't like giving up Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and at the time, Little Russia, which became Ukraine. And he gave up all that geography just so they could survive, that the Red Army could survive. And they did survive. And then later, of course, you know what happened. But it was the idea that he had the sense that, Lenin himself didn't want to give up that geography. But he knew to get what he wanted to do, he had a binary choice. Because if he didn't do it, Germany was going to take all of Eastern Europe, and that would have been it. And there wouldn't have been any Red Army, and there wouldn't have been a White Army. There would have been the Reichstag in Moscow, essentially. And who knows what would have happened after that as far as, World War I, because, Woodrow Wilson wasn't giving any real support to the White Army in Russia. But long story short, it's about making concessions. And this is my problem with the far left and certain channels. And this, again, Rudel, this is not directed at you, but it reminds me of a few channels that are related to this channel, related to the Reality Report channel. And that is, this is why I couldn't take it, they were fence sitters. And again, I'm not necessarily accusing you of being one. I'm just, when I see that...
Right, I'm not. I want to take issue with what you're saying now, just for a moment. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I just want to make it clear. A fence sitter who voted for Ralph Nader is not a fence sitter. They voted. You're saying that, right?
No, they're not a fence sitter, but if they're going to ignore what they defend, in other words, you want to make...
my point is, I'm not real sure...
I know exactly where you're coming from. You're saying to me that, fence sitting connotates, I don't know where to go, I'm going to dither, and I just go on and on, and then I make the mistake. And
when I hear fence sitting, maybe it's just me, a fence sitter's, I'm not sure. A decision is the opposite of fence sitting. Now,
right.
You argue with someone at that time, or if Jesse Ventura were to run, whoever runs this time, to say, look, I appreciate you can vote for whoever you want, but can I have a few minutes of your time? And you present your best pitch. To me, the reality is, assuming that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are the candidates, but let's say something horrible happens to both of them. The race will be, unfortunately, between the Republican nominee and the Democratic nominee. Now, what you have to ask yourself as a citizen is, can I find it in my heart to vote for either one of them or against one of them? Or does the Green Party candidate, does the Communist Party candidate, does the and then you cast your vote accordingly. The people that bother me the most, and they have a right to do that, but not in this election. See, to me, fence sitters, I'm just saying the people that say, you know what, I'm not going to vote. It doesn't mean anything. Well, God damn it, it does. It does. Now, let me preface that. In New Jersey, if 10,000 Democrats who would always vote Democrat decide to stay home, the Democratic nominee candidate, not the nominee, the candidate will win New Jersey. But in Pennsylvania, that could swing an election either way. So I think the idea of it is, and I don't know why people don't vote. I mean, they say they have to take a day off work. Shit, I try to take a day off work off of everything. People say it's too hard to vote. The lines are too long. You hear all these excuses. No. Well,
let me make this clear. So, when I say offensive,
I wasn't real comfortable with you.
As you said, let's just put it in my mind. There's really only two choices. You say have two people can possibly win. So when the person who, let's go back to 2000, the person who voted for Ralph Nader, they had that choice of really two people who were going to have a chance of winning. And they said, okay, now I hate this Republican Party because they've got a guy named George Bush and he's horrible. But, my mom and dad are Republicans and they taught me that, like the Democrats are really bad. So I want to show that, I'm a fair person. I don't like them either. So essentially they're fence sitting because they do know that there's only two choices.
No, there's not only two choices, Brian. There's as many choices.
Right. Absolutely.
And as many, if you want to write in Mickey Mouse, be my fucking guest. However, what you need to know by doing that is what you are doing and what you're accomplishing or not accomplishing, right? That's all. There were people that believed that Ralph Nader in that election, and we're using Nader, it could be anybody, right, who's ever run as a minority candidate or the handful of third-party people. If you really believe that, then you vote for that person. I mean, you have to. What about
No, I understand that. Look, those people are going to vote for whomever they believe in. I mean, I get that. We talked to Antonio, and he's still talking with Sandy about, I don't like this. This will get us. In fact, he's perhaps going to choose to vote for Trump, which is his business. I get that. Okay, but you and I know, as you said, it will come down to two, and your choice will have an effect. And that effect is you are essentially voting for Trump when you're voting for the third party, even though you'll deny it.
Whoa. You can't say that because we don't know. There could be there could be some who would vote.
I get that.
So what you are voting, your vote is not going to count for somebody, right? Who's going to win?
It's going to count for one of the binary choices.
Correct. I'm saying it's not going to count. Right.
Right.
And that's why. But that's the difference, Brian, between an idealist
and a Lenin, a pragmatist.
A pragmatist. And I love my years as an idealist. I really admire idealists. I really do. But there's a practical side to me that says what gets me closest to the ideal is what I'm going to vote for. Now, I like, and like is saying sarcastically, people who say, Dave, you're a Democrat. No, I'm an anti-Trumper. Okay? The other thing that I think is, I hope it's fallacious thinking. I've devoted a lot of my time to speaking out, writing out against Trump, and it's something I do, and it doesn't bother me. But I can't see myself doing it if the Republican nominee had been John Kasich or Jeb Bush. We would have disagreed, right? As I did with George W. Bush, as I did with Ronald Reagan, because I'm liberal and I want a more liberal person. So, I mean, I think the Trump thing to me, I mean, I just laugh. You say binary, and that's one of the problems. Everybody wants to be binary, you know?
But when it comes to a presidential election, that's what we have.
I'm for everybody. I mean, that's what they want. They want to be, if you're against Trump, you're a Democrat, right? If you're for Trump, you're a Republican. That's not true. It's just not true.
Right. You don't even like Biden that much. I don't.
Well,
Let's go to Rudel's comment here. I think
back up.
because this kind of gets to the core of where we're going with this.
Okay. I want to go right directly to Rudel.
Okay, go ahead. You want to read it for? Can you read it from there?
I can say it.
Okay.
Will Biden really be a better choice in the long run? Rudel, I'm going to say two things to you. I'm not trying to change your vote. Trust me. I certainly try to see where you're coming from. And the interesting thing is that there is so much validity in what you're saying. So it's not like I'm dismissing it as people do us out of hand. What I would say to that remark is this. We know what kind of president Donald Trump will be. Why do we know? He's had 4 years in the job. We can speculate over a 40-year career of Joe Biden's, what Joe Biden's will be. But we don't know. So the choice would be for someone to show that is, I guess it takes kind of a leap of faith. And I'm willing to make that leap. I know for a fact that Donald Trump, like I said, I don't know how many other ways I can say it. He's just bad. He's just a bad man. And I don't think Joe Biden is a bad man.
Right. So and again, when it goes back to the other channels, they believe that Biden is every bit as bad. I don't know how I can keep saying this. Every bit as bad as Trump.
But Brian, you have to listen. You have to look at their side. When I say their side, I'm going to say I'm on their side. I mean, I am in a certain way because I think the question becomes this then. The practical side is if you want for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it the Bernie Elizabeth. Let's even get Elizabeth out of it. We'll call it the Bernie Sanders dream. I backed him in 2016. Okay. Your best shot was Bernie to win and become president, and that didn't happen, right? So now it's what do you do now? Then you have to ask yourself, which one, I would ask everybody, which one is closer to that dream? I mentioned this earlier, but I think it's a very important point to Elizabeth Warren supporters, Bernie Sanders supporters, Cory Booker, anybody in the Democratic Party. Those people that you chose, you believe they would be the best president, right? I mean, if you were backing him in the primary,
right.
If you were a Democrat backing him. Well, are they going to have more power with Joe Biden as president to pull off what they want, which is what you want? Or are they going to have less power? Well, of course they're going to have more with the Democrats. And maybe I am being duped. Wouldn't be the first time in my life. I try not to be, but I've been duped a few times. I've been doing a lot of reading about what's going on in the Biden camp as much as I can. I'm not there. I'm not privy to it. And from what I've read, Biden, wanted to run the Joe Biden presidency. Why wouldn't you, right? Why wouldn't you, Brian? You want to run the Brian Weinstein presidency, right? I'd want to run the Dave Price presidency. Of course we would. But times dictate what you can do. This is not those times, right? The liberal left, of which I've been associated with since 1968, is moving faster now than they have at any time, right? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we can get to that. I'm a little worried about that. But that's the thing is, so they're on the march, right? What party is doing the Democrat? So it's
let me ask you this, Dave. Let's make an analogy, and it's going to be a high school analogy. But you have this classroom, 50% boys and 50% girls. There's one just super attractive girl in the class. And there are 12 guys in the class and 12 girls, and all the 12 guys fall in love with this gem of a human being. Just looks like a porcelain goddess. She's just beautiful, and everybody wants to date her. Everybody wants to take her to the prom.
Brian, they want to do more than that.
Well,
but okay.
Whatever. But the greater point is that now you have the fight, the social Darwinism going on between those 12 guys. You have the 11 other women who are going to be just completely shunned. And it gets nowhere. The reality is one person's going to go on that date. And you have to make your choices.
I'm going to take your analogy in a little different way.
But everybody, see, I'm saying that because everybody has seen that. If you went to high school, you may not say it out loud, but you knew it had happened.
Okay. So I'm going to be in that classroom, right? I'm going to be one of those 12 boys, and this is the most attractive woman I've ever seen.
And it could be the other way around.
I'm whatever. You know what the practical side of me says? Let them fight over it. I'm going to get the second best.
Yeah, right. That's Dave. Yeah,
no,
right.
And I'm serious. Right. Sometimes that's the way you have to look at it. Mm-hmm. So the question becomes, this is something that I say when I speak to my friends. I certainly have more friends that are Antifa and, the old Occupy people and that kind of thing. And I love, I'm not patting my back. I love their idealism. I do. But sometimes you can't take the person you want to the prom, but you want to go to the prom because maybe at the prom, the person you want to take is going to leave the person, I'll just say you want to get close. That's now we're so sexist. Fuck that. But anyway, the idea of it is that yes, we all should pick our choice, right? This would be the best person to be president of the United States, whoever that is. Mm-hmm. And then that process is winnowed out, right? Mm-hmm. And you get two, and then you get.
Well, you said it 3 weeks ago. What's best for most?
Well, but I don't even think. Well, I don't even think you need to go there. I mean, yeah, I could go there. I've said it, and that's true. I think you just go what's best for what you want. And I'm going to say, if you are in any side of the left, unless you want complete anarchy to rebuild. Mm-hmm. And that's fine if that's what you choose. You'd have to work awfully hard to convince me why Biden wouldn't be a better choice than Trump.
And by the way, this is all playing out in Kentucky with Booker and the other candidates she's running.
I think about that. I mean, Booker's going to win. Is going to win.
Well, he's not going to win now. He's basically lost.
Booker made a fantastic run.
Right.
Okay, from nowhere. He was like minus, no, there's no minus, but and what Booker did, and from a little bit I've read about him, he's a pretty good guy.
It's only it was 2 points behind.
But what I'm saying is,
I think it's 2 points.
He made a fantastic run. But also, there's about this winning and losing, and I liked what I forget who said it earlier. In the long run, there's a short run and there's a long run, right?
That's Rudel, I think.
So yeah, I like that.
By the way, thanks, Rudel. I mean.
So often we forget about the long run, or we only look at the long run and not the short run. So in the short run, McGrath won, right? Mm-hmm. But now in the long run, we don't know. You know what I mean? The next hurdle for her is, can she beat Mitch McConnell? And that's a very difficult task.
Especially since they're not all that much different. I thought maybe Booker would have been the decisive factor, but who knows?
Well, no, what I'm saying is, either way, yeah. Okay, Rudel, I'll come back to you. Let's put Rudel on the spot. If you were to vote today, Rudel, and I'll tell you who I'm going to vote for. Of the candidates we know, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. I will try with my last breath to convince someone, even though it's a meaningless task, not to vote for Donald Trump. But I promise, Rudel, I won't do it to you. I promise I won't. So this is your chance. You can't grab outside a Democrat who didn't get it. There's no Bernie Sanders. There's no Elizabeth Warren. There's no Kamala Harris. There's nobody associated necessarily with the Democratic Party. There's nobody you can grab on the Republican Party. So, who do you see as the person you want to be president who could be on the ballot November 3rd? That's all.
So Riddle will leave it there, and I'll put your comment up.
Yeah, that's why I'm not.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just serious.
and while
Maybe.
he does do this, we've been on the air for over an hour, and I just want to make sure we get to this other topic.
Oh, go ahead, Brian. Bring
And
it in.
Dave, that's the pandemic, because I didn't want to forget that. In fact, this was really the gist of the show, but it's okay that it's not the main portion. But it's the idea that if you look at those maps, folks, we saw 2 months ago where were most of the kids.
I'm just gonna get.
Yeah, I'll basically explain to everybody. Dave's got to go for a second. So,
I'm here.
oh, you're there?
Oh, good old green tea.
All right. So, if you looked at the maps 2 months ago, you would see that the concentration of COVID-19 cases and deaths were obviously on the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic states, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and then you saw it, of course, in the state of Washington and then in California. And it was really, Trump it was really bothering him that we weren't getting back to work. He's willing to not give money to those states, and the states needed the money because, that next year we have to have these school budgets come through, and he really wants to put the screws to those states. And again, that it comes down to Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, and California. But now when you look at the maps, it's basically all of the Republican states are in trouble. I mean, the heat is dropping on all of those states now, so much so that you've got the governor of Texas doing an about face. DeSantis is shitting himself because he's got so many cases every day, thousands of cases of every day, because he knows what those thousands of cases are going to turn out to. Even if it's only 2%, it could turn out to be 5% deaths. We know what's going to happen in 2 weeks, and we know what's going to happen at those hospitals. And you can't avoid the body bags. And when it happens in Republican states, and these are Republican voters in general, now the tide has turned. All of a sudden, Mitch McConnell's wearing the fucking mask. All of a sudden, everybody but Rand Paul, because of course he's had it, and he's an asshole.
And Donald Trump.
And Donald Trump, right. So now there's a dilemma, because death is at the Republicans' door. It's not us. The disease, as you said, Dave, it doesn't care which party you're from, but now it rests in rural America and in southern. And what does that say? That's white America. That is Republican America. And those people are going to die over the next 2 months. And if they continue to not wear the mask and they continue to have these rallies, these Republican governors are going to be in big trouble, and it's going to carry over to the Republican senators, which is why, by the way, I think that Mike DeWine from Ohio, as much as he's a conservative, he was one of the first ones to shut it down because he knew it was happening. In fact, Ohio now is going to kind of go back to what they were doing because they're afraid that it's going to turn into a death factory. So you're basically going to have death factories in Republican states. I mean, you couldn't have a better situation if you wanted to be a Ted Kaczynski of the Democratic Party. You've got it in COVID-19 now, because these people don't want to take off their masks. They do want to hang out, and that is the perfect concoction of behaviors that's going to create death. And that scares the shit out of these politicians, even Ron DeSantis and Brian Kemp. All right, Dave, I know you've got a lot to say on that, because that's really where I wanted to go tonight, even though we did have to talk about the bounty.
Yeah, no, I think that was. I mean, the bounty is the big issue, and now you've got, that's.
But this, one, as Rudel says, in the long run, this is the bigger issue.
Absolutely bigger than anything we're going to discuss tonight. This, okay, and this is the pandemic. Earlier, somebody on the show said, "What kind of wild card? Not wild card. What was it?"
Dave, your hands over the mic there or something.
I'm sorry. The wild card, October surprise. He used a different word somebody tonight. By the way, aren't there any women listening tonight? These are all guys.
I don't know. I think I'm going to check to see if it's Gary Peacock. Yeah, it's Gary Peacock. He's got that little peacock there, so we know it's Gary. So if you see that green peacock, you know it's your buddy Gary there.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Look, we've already had the October surprise. It just came early. It came in January. and maybe even a little earlier, they're thinking, this pandemic, name one thing it hasn't changed. And you can't. Do you know why? It's changing everything. Now, a number of people smarter than we kind of all wrote at the same time, but about this. There was a time when the pandemic was viewed as two different pandemics. Urban and rural. Hey!
Keith Boyd.
Glad to see you there. I talked to my son tonight.
He wants his $2,000.
I'll tell you earlier. No. So what happens? Okay, you had two, and they're saying this isn't a big deal, right? Oh yeah, the pig. Oh yeah, that's great. The one good thing is, Keith, read a little bit more in depth. I mean, before we throw it in, that's something to be concerned about. But some people think we can handle that better. We can keep it in the pigs. I don't know. No, but that's out there, people. If you haven't been following, it's real and it's there. Anyway, back to what we're saying. So the people in the Midwest, the people in the far west, the Rocky Mountains and stuff, they're there. Isn't anything to this. Well, we're fine. It's a little flu thing, right? Well, they're now finding out that it doesn't recognize state borders. It doesn't say, I'm only going to get people in bars. I'm not going into churches, right? It goes in wherever there's a crowd of people without.
Especially stupid people, correct? Selfish, stupid people are going to get killed.
Isn't that implied if you don't wear a mask? You're selfish or stupid or both. It's that simple. Some research I'm doing for an article now is, do you realize there's a tremendous difference, which doesn't surprise me, the number of men who'll wear masks and the number of women who'll wear masks? Men are much more reluctant. Makes them look effeminate. Makes them, it doesn't match their outfits. I don't know. They're macho, okay? That's why we're going to rename John Wayne Airport, which, we could go on all night about that, but whatever. So now suddenly you find out, now, if we had done it right, and Keith, shout out, I'm not necessarily a charter member of the Scott Morrison fan club.
Who is?
Here's the thing.
Huh.
Here's what Hadding has this, right? As I talk for the people of the 6 I most value in the world, that would be my son, my daughter-in-law, and my 2 grandchildren. And then it would be myself, my wife. No. So I'm talking to 4 of them. Australia handled it right. They're serious about it. Again, Keith, you might know this more. I was talking to Michael tonight. Apparently, there was a small outbreak in Melbourne. With their testing and ready, they've actually narrowed it to, I think, 5 neighborhoods and 11 business. You know what I mean? They can go in with that. We have no idea. We're not testing. We're not this. We're not that. We're not this. So I find it interesting. Now, have you ever, again, I'm not a repository of all history, but I don't know that a state has ever, to my knowledge, in my lifetime, banned citizens from other states from free entry and saying you must quarantine for 14 days. New York is up to that. 14 states. Now, does that make sense? Yes. How they get infected? See,
right, how do you enforce that?
Well, people go back. Here's how you enforce that. You have a president who stands up and listens first to the scientists. That's number one. You have a president who's smart enough to realize that you have no economy if everybody's dead.
Right.
You have no economy if everybody's in fear. You need to be draconian. Now, science doesn't choose a party. Science doesn't choose a religion. It's not anti-religion, people. There's no religion involved in science. Science is based supposedly on fact, hypothesis. Religion is based on faith. Never the two shall meet, etc., etc. But the best statistics I've seen is if everyone wore a mask, you reduce the chances by 80%. Last I knew, you can't do the same damage when you're doing 20% versus 100%.
Right.
So we kind of blew it from the get-go.
Correct.
Now,
Now, Fauci, of course, said that they had to kind of give us bad information about the mask because they need to have the first
some of that was look, and that was
first
very.
responders.
I mean, we live here in Washington. I mean, I don't live technically in Washington. I live in Crystal City, but it's three metro stops away, and I worked there for 9 years. But the idea of it is, we are a more international community, say, than where I came from, South Jersey. But the idea of it is, masks have been a way of life here since we've been here, but not with us, with Asians. And I have to admit, I kind of looked, why would you do, Well, I now understand, right? And look, I wish I were smarter. I'm not. Initially, I said, it's a flu. How bad can it be? Well, it took me about a week of research to understand, boy, was I wrong. Okay?
Definitely not just a flu. There's no doubt about that. The flu is,
No,
so much less lethal.
This is not even the flu on steroids. It's beyond that.
Right.
All right. There are people, ladies and gentlemen, I'll speak to tonight for the dignity of man. No, I don't know how many of you have ever taken LSD or any hallucinogen. I've taken my fair share over the years. I don't anymore. And you get trips, and some of them are very good, and some of them aren't so good. And basically, one of the things that these victims are doing without drugs in hospitals when they're severe, they're hallucinating. They're trying to kill them. Monsters are after them. They go into a state of paranoia. So it's mental. It's physical. There are people who have been 65 days with it now. It comes, it goes. Well, it's not a misery loves company. I mean, it was going to be inevitable. So the question is now, what do you do? Well, Fauci said, you get 100,000 more. Now, let's go to our state, or my former state, your state. Brian, I thought maybe I missed it. Now, did they never go to indoor dining yet?
Never went. Well, they're not. Outdoor dining you could do, but no, in fact, he already said today, no outdoor.
So what the governor did, is now being crucified by people who don't agree, is he pulled back on allowing inside dining. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But you did have outside dining. Is that correct?
Outside dining under cabanas and things like that.
And do you still have it?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. The reason I'm saying is there's a big difference. Okay. We're, in Virginia here, we've gone through the 4 phases. Nothing frozen. That was very quickly undone to go with takeout only and delivery. That was followed up by outdoor dining, and we're now in indoor seating. Now, again, we're not a great community to judge because we have 22,000 people who live here. But we have 60,000 who come into work. And as I keep mentioning this, it's just unbelievable to me. 60,000. And I think probably this week we probably went back over 1,000 of those, right? So we're missing 59,000 people who normally are here. But having said that, you walk around, people are getting more comfortable with dining outside. Judy and I do it. Judy, she will not go inside to dine yet. So it's more than just this, open and, what's the thing from, I actually really think about that. The movie Field of Dreams, build it and they will come.
Right.
Is it open and they will come? I walked through the mall the other day. I mean, I do it periodically. Nobody's going to go just to check and see. I've written a couple of stories about what it's like, the stores there, mall. Its business is under 25%, and there's no restriction, right?
Right.
I mean, there's no restriction. So people aren't going to buy it. So this idea of course it's going to be everywhere. Now, should Mitch McConnell have been promoting masks the first time? Sure. Should everybody? Now the question becomes, and this is the scary thing, and I don't have an answer, is it too little too late? The extreme would be, let's just open everything and let's just roll the dice and see how many people die. That's one thing you could do, right? I don't think that's the right way. The other way, though,
you don't even know what would happen if you let that happen. How bad that could get in terms of how it could affect.
I'm saying, people are going to die. X is going to be.
Well, not only that, the cost of hospitalization, the burials.
There's people who are still. I mean, they finally just a couple of weeks ago got everybody buried in New York. They were sitting in frozen, frozen storage areas.
Right.
It's really hard for me, being an optimist by nature, a realistic optimist. Remember that. I don't see anything good. Brian, would you time me? I want to do something quick tonight that's going to lead us right.
And
back
don't forget, I just wanted to say, if you can make one last 3-minute comment on this, and I will put up the timer because I know you have things you want to talk about.
No,
but
on what?
What will this mean now for the Republican governors down south with the pandemic getting out of control?
Okay. We both, you and I, live in northern states. Me in Virginia, you in New Jersey. So we know it was bad. Here, Governor Northrop, it's interesting. I just got to make this comment. Do you realize that Governor Northrop at one point should not have been governor because as a college student, I believe, or graduate student, he did a thing in blackface? I mean, it's interesting. I don't want to debate that tonight. But, what do we excuse? What do we not excuse? We're in that period now. But anyway, they've done a pretty good job. So what does it mean for Republican governors? Basically, it means they have an even tougher decision because, look, they said go do your thing, and now they've got to pull it back.
Which makes them look bad in itself. It basically says, you know what? I fucked up.
There's still people who don't believe in it. Why can't I go to work? You know them. They're all around. Why can't I go do
really, Dave, for example, I have my cousin. You know him out in Vegas.
Yeah.
And now he's finally back to work. He was avoiding it. He loves Trump, didn't believe in the virus thing, but now he has to go back to work. And this last week I spoke to him, and he said, it's kind of strange. I got to go out to work. I said, well, don't worry. It's all okay. He said, shit, you told me that I should go back, and now, I shouldn't go back, and now you're oh, no, it's fine, Jeff. Go back to work. But he's scared.
Well, let's put it like this. You think it's bad now. It's only going to get worse.
Right. It has to get worse.
Because it was going to be bad no matter what we did. Now, this is something that I hate the word fascinating when it's horrifying. I could not conceive of a set of circumstances, but nature could, where Europeans would say, Americans, with all your dollars, do not come here to spend them. We're on the ban, along with Russia and along with Brazil.
And by the way, Russia, they're third right now in the world, and that Putin's lying about their deaths.
Well, I understand all that, but what I'm saying is, that's pretty amazing to say we don't want your money because you're going to bring this stuff in, and we are, okay. And the scary thing is, all of us have to make certain decisions, right?
Well, now what's going to happen with the airlines? Because now that's going to cut 30% of their revenue. Some of them more than that because they only deal with international flights to Europe.
Correct. Okay. I can't remember. I know we've not go. Well, we didn't go to Australia. We didn't. We didn't go to other places. That's just the way it is right now. So, but I guess the scariest thing is we can't stay home and hide. We can't open. We have to depend on others doing their thing. So basically, it's this. I still got 4 seconds. I'm going to quote Michael Rappaport. Mike, for anybody who doesn't know him, he's as somebody who doesn't like him said, he's a C- list actor. He's pretty talented, and he's just comes out and he uses the fuck word immeasurably well. My wife, that's not one of her favorite words. She's and I showed her a video the other day. It just laughed. He does it well. And I'm going to say it in his words, if I may. Wear the fucking mask, you stupid fuckers, and let's see what happens. That's all we can do.
Right. And if I could say one last thing, I'm just saying this is just desserts for those Republican governors down south. It's just desserts that they have to deal with this now. Now, you may say that they don't care, they'll lie. That may be the case, but they're squirming. They're squirming because when those body bags come in like they were in Brooklyn, when they come into, southern Florida and they don't have the room for them, it's kind of like Eisenhower, telling the Nazis, you're going to pick up the dead bodies now because you were responsible. You let this happen. You pick the fucking things up.
Well, see, and again, we've had that theme tonight on some questions, and I like it. You know, what's long run, what's short run, what's good for the long run. That's 1.7 people dying in U.S. with business as usual. Yeah.
That's a lot. That's more than the Civil War.
And Brian, here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. Now, granted, I'm a words guy, not a numbers guy. But, if it's your grandmother, one death is too many. And that's what that's what you're looking at, right? I mean, not all deaths are equal. Okay. So, we kid ourselves. We should be, nobody's that way. But what happens is, we have this thing. It's a thing. It's out there. It's real. It's not something I've taken up. I guess it doesn't speak high of my character, but I've taken up reading both nonfiction and fiction a lot about the pandemic, just to understand it and be able to write about it. But this, it's not like any book we've ever read. It's not like 1918. Okay. It's not like SARS. It's not like HIV. It's COVID-19 with the world being in 2019, which is, where it originated. So I don't really have a good answer. I don't think that's what you were asking me for.
Which is basically your input about how this will it change Trump's behavior because of the Republican governors.
Okay, but then again, this is why you kind of have to be right first if you can be. Mitch McConnell basically poo-pooed masks. Now he's wearing one.
Right.
Well, Mitch, God damn it, there are people who are still going to believe that they're going to remember that you told them not to. Okay. Donald Trump, maybe you will once in your lifetime remain true to your principles. You don't have any, but if you don't wear the mask, whatever.
I don't mind if he doesn't wear the mask, but please, God damn it, shake some hands and go talk to your people.
Here's another thing. I'm not saying that, this is another reason I'm going to vote for Biden. Biden is already on record as saying he will make masks mandatory in the United States. Now, what does that mean? I understand that, okay? Do you arrest people? I mean, I don't know what you do. I'll tell you what you do. This is terrible. My wife is not a member of PETA, but she had a crusade a few years ago about people who wore fur coats. She didn't like it. She didn't throw paint on them or anything. And we were spending time in New York, and of course, there's a lot of fur coats in New York in the winter. And everybody should go by. She wouldn't say much. I love this one. I saw this is a great protest. Her new protest now is on the elevator. We live in a twin-story, 528 units here. A lot of people on elevators. The majority, and when I say the majority, 85% get on there without a mask. I mean, with a mask. I'm sorry. But if someone gets on there, she makes it a point as the elevator does. She said, "Could you please consider wearing a mask for others?" That's her thing. Now, is she going to change anybody? I'm glad she waits till the door closed because we'll probably get punched in the nose. But no, that kind of thing. I mean, we got it. You try to do that. There's some interesting concepts now of coming out, and I don't know if you saw it. I was fascinated with this, using the character from Jason from Friday the 13th, and it's a really humorous site about wearing a mask, and you might be solitary and lonely, but use it. And they're trying to get people like that. We follow celebrities. Obviously, we elected one, right, as president. Wear the mask, wear the mask, wear the mask. But I think what's important, I just want to quote, because Don Olbricht, who follows the show from time to time, says it's not a show until I say, fuck you, Donald Trump. And I haven't yet, so I still got to do that. But the idea of Michael Rappaport, you have to have those people in their face saying, fucking wear the mask, you motherfuckers. You have to have people like my wife, could you please consider wearing a mask? You have to have a president who says, wear the mask and models it, right?
Or the doctor says you're dying. That kind of gets you going.
Well, no, you have to have all of that, right? And right now, I would say that the number of people who don't believe this is real, I still know some who don't, but that number's been reduced. But what hasn't been reduced enough is people, they know it's real, but they still don't want to wear the mask.
Right.
Or they don't think they need to wear a mask.
Yeah, I've seen that too. So, listen, Dave, we do want to move on to what you wanted to do. Remember,
I'll stay here forever now. Let me just finish with this.
There's 10 things or whatever you want to talk about.
I will. Chad Mansfield, who also a former student of mine who watches from time to time, I thought Chad made a really great point. I was reading something the other day in Facebook, and it was about the closing the bars, and I thought the first point was interesting. The first point said, why do you have to close everything? Why can't you just close the places that aren't doing what they're supposed to? Now, on the surface, that sounds pretty good, right, Brian?
Right.
I mean, I always used to have that problem as an educator. I'm not going to punish 21 students in my room for something one person did, right? I mean, that's just the way. It's not fair. But sometimes you don't have that luxury, because what if you don't close all the bars? Those people are just going to go to another place,
Right.
and do it. And so, unfortunately, we're relying on the concern and the compassion and the empathy and the belief in science and a whole bunch of things for people to do the right thing. And I've not yet heard, unless you have a viable medical reason that putting a mask on your face jeopardized your life, I've not heard a reason yet that I would consider valid for not wearing a mask.
Right.
Probably the most valid is the one that's the most ludicrous. In the beginning, if I were a black man having to go to a bank, I probably wouldn't want to wear a mask. I don't mean that to make, but I mean the situation the way it is. All right, Brian, what I want to run through just here real quickly and put the timer up. Give me a minute each. Give me 10 minutes. I don't want to run over this. And I'll
10 minutes on the timer?
Yeah, put 10 minits up.
All right, let's do that.
I have 10 points that I thought about just recently. So please bear with me, kids. I don't call you kids because you're kids, but I'm saying this is an article I'm working out. So here's what we have. America today is facing, I think, 10 major crises at one time, but they didn't all originate here. The first crisis we had began 401 years ago, and that's racism. We started with slavery. We've never clearly broken away from that, in the idea that a group of people are less human than another group of people. We're there. I was researching today. Hold on just a minute. I want to get the facts here. I never really look at stuff to get the fact, but I want to. Do you realize, Brian, that there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 presidents in U.S. history? So what's that? Almost a third, right? 45, probably 12, that owned slaves. Okay?
Sounds about right.
Yep. Now, I'm going to give you some slave numbers. Not all these figures are accurate. George Washington, 317 slaves. Thomas Jefferson, 600 plus. James Madison, 100 plus. That means and John Adams is 900. Of our 4 first presidents, they owned collectively more than 1,000 slaves. Washington, D.C. built on slavery, da-da-da-da. We have racism. It's still facing us today. Then we move. That's even before we're a country, right? Then we move to form a country, and we get the first of what we still have today, which I call the us versus them. The first us versus them was secession versus non-secession, right, from England, or, break from England. Then we got into the North-South, which was also economics and slavery, etc. Well, that's never gone away with the sections. We're still refighting South, North. You brought up rural, there's all these things. But we make it through. We form a country. We fight a war over slavery. It doesn't change anything much about racism. And some would argue it exacerbated it in the Reconstruction. Now, prior to when the United States was formed, we were still in what was called the agricultural revolution, which basically simply is farming was the big thing in subsidiary areas. In the 19th century, we get the Industrial Revolution, and we make it through that. That takes us up. But there's positional changes and some things still surface. Then we get to the technological informational age, which we're in now. So I'm going to pin that about 1980, not because Reagan was elected, but that's when computers start coming in, right, around that period. So all of a sudden now, because of that, some crises that we had get exacerbated. And the 3 that I would say really get exacerbated then, we have an educational crisis, which is still ongoing today. Versus old schooling versus new schooling versus who gets the good schooling versus public schooling versus private schooling, blah, blah, blah. Then we get a health crisis. Basically, what it is who can afford health, right? And that starts to be astronomical. It's almost unaffordable. We're the only industrialized, civilized Western nation that doesn't have some type of mandatory health care. And all this leads, because now, if you're really smart, but you have to be computer gifted. You get your Bill Gateses, you get your Jeff Bezoses. The income inequality begins to build. And that takes us through to around the time of Newt Gingrich, Clinton, all of a sudden, political partisanship becomes even greater, which brings us, though, I don't think that's a crisis in and of itself. It actually maybe is one of the biggest crises of the 10. This is number 6, which would be a reality divisiveness. In America right now, nobody can agree on what reality is, right? I mean, they can't. Republicans see it one way, blacks, whites. No, there's a reality out there. Just not everybody can't have their own. It doesn't work. So now nothing's going real well. We elect the Bushes and Barack, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, and historians will know, I have my theories. We elect Donald Trump, but okay, and then comes number 7, which is this pandemic. There's nothing in my lifetime, because I wasn't alive in World War II, that will change the world more than this. Nothing. Right? We're not even in a second wave, which we know is coming. Now, suddenly, this is a time, and Brian, you said it so well. I mean, it just caught me by surprise. Not that something you'd say caught me by surprise, because why did watching a white policeman kill a black man, which we know has been going on for how many years did I say? 401? Because everybody was home, everybody was vulnerable, right? Everybody's uneasy. So now we're undergoing this cultural, social justice crisis, which is a crisis. We could devote hours to that. We won't. If anybody wants to ask questions about it, it's basically it's playing out before us. And here's the one we haven't seen yet. We know about the Great Depression from history. We know about it from our grandfathers, and in my case, from my father. Some people say, well, the stock market is doing so well. That's not what it's about, and they won't do it forever. We're going to see an economic crisis, the likes of which we can't even begin to imagine. And the 10th and the biggest crisis, and this is where I end, I hope I made it under my 10 minutes. We're overseeing all this, the one from 401 years ago, racism, to the one that started in 2019, we're being overseen in America and guided by Donald Trump. And that is a complete crisis in leadership. Now, America's faced crises before. America will face crises in the future. Crises or crises? We've never faced 9 as serious as these 9 with the leadership, or I should say lack of leadership, that Donald Trump exhibits. So, why do I end with Donald Trump? Now, of all those 10, which is the one we can knock out first? Get rid of Donald Trump. Is that going to cure the other 9? No, it's not. But it's going to give us a better shot and a better handle. Oh, global warming. Absolutely, Keith.
Especially in Australia. So that's...
Yeah. It's not. I'm not saying it's not here, and I'm not dismissing it. My next time, I will. Keith, thank you for pointing that out. I actually had it in my original notes, and it didn't make the transition. And it's my bad.
But that's okay.
As the kids would say. And that might be the one, it's going to kill us all faster than the others. But I'll throw that in the list. I'll go with those 10. Actually, what I'll do, Keith, thank you. I'll do 10 and then say Trump is like the 11. It doesn't. I was just doing it for magic number 10, and I might have forgotten others. But the idea of it is, I would go, and I just want to do this for a minute. Ready?
Sure.
I'm just going to ask a question. Anybody, please feel free to answer this. Does Donald Trump make racism better or worse? Does Donald Trump makes the idea of us versus them better or worse? Does Donald Trump make the educational crisis better or worse? Does Donald Trump make the health crisis better or worse? Does Donald Trump make inequality better or worse? Does Donald Trump make the jointure of political partisanship and reality diversity better or worse? Does Donald Trump make the COVID-19 pandemic and its effects better or worse? Does Donald Trump make the cultural, social justice crisis that we currently face better or worse? Does Donald Trump have shown any indication that when this economic depression comes, and it's on its way and it's coming, he will make it better and worse? Picking up on Keith's thing, does Donald Trump make the environmental crisis better or worse? And that's another way you determine on worse, the worst. And I would agree. So, now we're back to where we started, Brian. Does Joe Biden make them better or worse? I can't say it'll make them better, but I don't think it'll make them worse.
Right, he's the worst person at the worst time, and that becomes an exponential problem in itself. So, and that's what I think about it. You say, and this is why he's been successful. He's had people that have helped him get through everything that he should have been nailed on. He's gotten away with it. Worst guy for the environment. Worst guy for some equity and income. Worst guy for the Supreme Court. Well, he's just the worst guy all the way through. So,
but I'm going to do a shout out tonight. I don't mean to embarrass her, but I'm going to do a shout out. Reverse. Lynn Rainier, Lynn Neff, Lynn Neff grew up. She told me this week that she was tired of my hatred, tired of my negative attitude, and tired of me attacking friends. She's a Trump person. And I said, Lynn, I can't tell you, what you believe disgusts me as much as apparently what I believe disgusts you. And that's where we are. Okay. So you say, why did I say that? Well, there's still people that are going to vote for Trump. There's still people that support Trump. There's still people that would disagree with our worst. Do you realize, Brian, what scares the shit out of me is the fact that there are people who still support him. Now I saw, and what are you going to say to that? You can't force, and
there's still people, even Keith, and we're close with Keith, but Keith just said, Keith, you came in late, but we already talked about this idea.
And I understand.
Keith thinks there won't be any change with Biden.
And I'm not saying there'll be big changes. I'm not.
I would say there will be big changes. Absolutely.
Well, there will be.
And that's, again, he's not my choice, but...
No, you don't have to qualify. When I say, if what you want is...
everything, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, well, it's not just that. But we also don't... Here's the other thing that I think a lot of people miss. And I guess I was maybe just lucky to catch it. There was a time when America could go on its own. You know why? We had the two best walls ever built. One was called the Atlantic Ocean, and the other was called the Pacific Ocean.
Absolutely.
And all we had to
worry
about...
Great natural barrier.
All we had to worry about was Canada, and they were too busy being nice. And Mexico, we beat their ass wrongly and took over their territory. Texas was theirs, and we just took it from them. But anyway, for what we had that. Then the modern age comes in, and we don't. And suddenly now we're one world. We are one world. How again, I've said this. I love this meme. It came out. It was a right-wing meme from an idiot who said, not that all right-wing people are idiots. There's two that are pretty good. But the idea was, you mean because some chink in China ate a monkey that a batted bit, I could get COVID? You know what the answer is? How do you think you got it? Absolutely. We're one world as long as planes are flying. You know what I mean? I mean, literally.
Right.
We can now be connected. Keith, I could leave tonight, not counting the hours that I would do a layover if we were flying, if I could get out of here. The airport is 49 seconds from my house, so I can walk it if the metro is not running. And I can be anywhere in the world in the air if I don't.
And not only that,
24 hours.
Keith,
guess what else can be there?
Keith can wire 2,000 to you in about 3 seconds.
Yeah, I would rather get the money from you.
Okay. Keith, I hope he gives you $2,000.
If I get over there, I'll take $2,000 from your bank account and give it to him when I get to Australia. But the idea of it is, again, and it's not like, look, I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm just here to say what I think. And if you buy into it, that's pretty cool. If you don't buy into it, that's fine too. But it just comes back to Trump has got to go, and thankfully, it's not Trump versus Ted Cruz. I still vote for Ted Cruz because I'd rather deal with a theocracy than I would Trump. It is Trump against somebody that I think does have merit, that I think will make a good president. Will have a very difficult job. He may not last, health wise. There are people asking him to commit to doing one term, and I always find that dangerous. I'm going to say something, and this is not an insider, but we talk about. We both know Doug Raniere. You worked with him. He's a Cumberland County politician. He's a wonderful guy.
Wonderful
in fact, he's too nice for politics. And he would come to me for advice, and he'd always reject it. And one of the things he did, and this is a true story, I only make them up sometimes, this one is true. Doug felt, because he had a pension from school, that he didn't want to take another salary necessarily. So he said he would give up his yearly salary if he won the surrogates race. And I said, Doug, don't do that. You never know what's going to happen. If you think that's going to get you 10 votes and win, it's not, you don't need it, whatever. But he went ahead and did it. That's fine. Not because he did. And then what happened? A fire destroyed his home, a second home that he had, a fishing home. And he needed some money. So he said, well, I said I wouldn't take the salary. I would. Boy, did he get crucified. So, you say, what does that have to do, with anything? Well, if I was back to Biden, if I were Joe Biden, I would not promise to serve just one term. I would say I will serve as long as the people want me to serve. Right? And I think that's all you can ask any president to do. And actually, that's what Donald Trump is going to do. He will serve as long as the majority of the people.
As long as he has the capacity to do it, too.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, that'll never, I don't know if we'll ever live to see. The 25th Amendment was not put in for, which is an interesting one. We should devote a whole show to that. Should the president of the United States undergo a battery of tests to assure the American public that they are psychologically and physically capable of holding the presidency? Okay. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But the 25th Amendment was basically meant in the event that, where Wilson had the stroke and, his wife ran it, or, maybe thinking a little bit about Reagan and the increasing dementia. Make America should be, please leave Trump and let America remain honor and its dignity and its freedom. You know what? I like to play with words. I'm going to play with them tonight if you'll indulge me for a couple minutes, people. Trump is going to make America great again, if you drop the again. Because again, as supposes, and I just want to dismiss why we have to drop the again. Whenever that was brought up, I'd always say, make America great again for whom? For black people, for women, for gay people, for immigrants. Then the list is long. So let's just say make America great.
Right.
Or greater.
When you say again, it ruins the whole thing. By the way, Dave, I don't know what your opinion is.
But here's what it is. Just let me say that and it'll be done, Brian. But here's what I want to say about that. Despite the pessimism that I have about the pandemic and America's ability to handle it, I'm very optimistic about what I'm seeing in the young people. I'm very optimistic about the fact that people are standing up. Now, granted, changing the name of an airport, taking down a statue, but the protests have to come first. And as I've said before, as someone who started protesting in the streets in 1969 here in Washington, D.C. and other places, once you get the idea is you should never be in a situation where you need a protest, right? The government should be responsive to the people. Protests don't happen when the government is responsive to the people. Protests happen when the government is not responsive to the people. And that's true of every protest in American history and every protest everywhere. But once you start the protest, it tends to get out of hand, right? Or can get. But anyway, having said that, I think it's encouraging. People say, oh, fools, fool did it. It took some bravery for people to say, I know there's a pandemic out there. I know it can kill me. But you know what? There are calls higher than that, right? And this is one of those times. And we're beginning to see things shift. Granted, not enough. Granted, we need to do much more. Granted, as someone said the other day, I thought it was great. They listed all the lip service things that have been done, but they said, get back to me when those 4 officers are charged and found guilty. Get back to me when we begin to see police departments, which we're seeing though to a certain extent. Now, too little, too late? No, it's never too late. It's never too late to change. The only too late, Keith, is I hope this isn't the way you look, and I'm not smart enough to know. If we're past the point of no return in the environment, then it's too little, too late.
Right.
I say we try to make it better in the years that we have, but other than that, it's never too little, too late. Remember, change is painful, change takes time, and change is not permanent. I really thought naively, I really did, people out there. I kind of thought with the election of Barack Obama that America had turned a corner. Well, we're back to square, not one, but square 2.
Right. So listen, Dave, I did want to mention this. I want to get everybody's feeling. This is a 2-hour broadcast tonight. The first 40 minutes had some audio issues. I can upload the recorded version, which will have probably the clear audio, or I can leave it as it is and just say forget it.
Upload the damn thing, make it better. What are you talking
all right,
about?
Then I'll do that. So what I'll do is I will leave the one up here, and I'll say like duplicate, and I have to make it like slightly different by like 2 seconds, and then I'll put it up. So you'll see, folks, you'll see this show. It'll be left up there as a Divided We Stand, like our 16th one or whatever it is, and then sometime tomorrow you'll see the first. Well, you'll see all of it, but you'll be able to hear the first 40 minutes better. Okay.
So let me get this techno wizard guy. If I hear you correctly, you leave this one run until sometime tomorrow when it'll be replaced by the good one.
I can replace it. Yes, I want to leave this one up just in case the other one doesn't work out well.
No. Listen to me. Let's talk technical here now.
Excuse me.
If it were me, and it's not, you notice, ladies and gentlemen, it's never my fault with the technical. It's always the man who just pushed his glasses. Now, Brian, look, we discuss this stuff all the time. We spent hours working it out. We're not quite there yet. But the idea, is this feasible? This is what I would suggest. This remains through the night, right?
Yes. For
anybody who wants to look at it. And then sometime tomorrow it disappears and the newer, better, improved version goes up.
If it's better, I will look at it.
Would you say what you mean the first time? No. If it's worse,
I assume it's going to be. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know. The recording is, there might be a flaw. I guess the audio will be better.
What the hell's going through your ears with those headphones? Of course, if it's worse, you're not going to put it. Where?
Oh, stop.
What kind of logic do you have? Let me ask you something. What is wrong with you? Why would you even consider putting up a worse version than what you had? Seriously, I want an answer to that. Oh, quiet, are we?
That's my answer.
I want to look, as a reporter, I need to tell them the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that sort of sounded like a baby crying, correct? But it wasn't. Actually, that happened. It was Brian had asked this girl out on a date. And I guess, it was a big date. It was a prom. We talked about it earlier. Remember, Brian, we were talking about proms. And so what happened was, he came to the door and he thought he was really spiffed up, and he's been recording things all his life, so he happened to have a tape recorder with him, and he thought, man, I'll get this and she'll say how it has. And that was the sound of his prom date to the junior prom upon seeing Brian at his door. And you think that was bad? You should have heard her 2 sisters and her mother. Their scream was even louder.
All right.
Again, one last thing, Brian, you keep bringing up.
Yeah.
We want honesty in this show, correct? Right. Okay. That laughter, folks, was one time Brian was swimming. There was nobody there. It was like a YMCA pool. And so he was swimming en natural. And so he walked out what he thought was a locker room door, and it was actually a meeting of the Women's Christian Unity group. And there he was standing, dripping wet, no towel, nothing. And that was their response looking at him. I mean, again, the only thing he had with him was that that's there.
I think it would have been probably more like the deranged woman. Okay.
Don't even try.
Well, anyway, in any case,
let me do the last word tonight, and then you get the final word. Okay. So, guys, whoever looked tonight, thank you for showing up. I wouldn't. Okay. My wife doesn't. She's, oh my God, who the hell would listen to you talk? My granddaughter says, oh, Grandpa. And Owie says, my grandson says, he asked my wife, he said, does Grandpa have to talk to everybody all the time? So I want to thank you for listening. Like I said, I'm not trying to change your mind. That's not what I'm here for. I like answering the questions. I like responding to the comments. I think that's good because really, that may be Donald Trump's biggest problem. He doesn't care or respond to what anybody else does. And while this is a far cry from Donald's show, Brian could fire me at any moment. Now that's not what I'm saying. But what it is, I think, as human beings, we have a responsibility to ourselves. We can spend a whole show on why Shakespeare's "To Thine Own Self Be True" is taken out of context. But we'll say tonight it wasn't. To Thine Own Self Be True. But also because we live in a social world, we also have a commitment to others. And so one way I try to fulfill that is to respond to your comments, just like I used to in the classroom, respond to what the kids ask. And I'm going to ask you tonight to probably do something you're already doing. But let's everybody, everywhere, not sing Kumbaya. We're not get the hatred out of our heart. But we can do something very simply to make the world a better place if everybody would, in the immortal words of Michael Rappaport, wear the fucking mask, you motherfuckers.
Okay. I was glad you didn't have to say Kumbaya again or anything like that. Well, anyway, thanks, everybody. Sorry about the broadcast issues. They're tough to deal with. You know what I mean? We've got here what we've got. But again, I ask everybody if you could just share this with one person, try to get them involved. We want to build a subscribership, whether it's through YouTube or Facebook. We really appreciate it. It seems to be much more of a Facebook thing. For every one subscriber on YouTube, we probably have 20 on Facebook. So it's a big difference. But we'd like to develop the YouTube one a bit. So we'll be on every Tuesday. Every once in a while, we'll have some other nights that we'll be on. And we expect Paul to be on every once in a while. Because, I mean, Paul's not a political guy. But he did say that, once he gets some time off, he will kind of jump in with us, which would be nice. All right, so for Dave Price and for me, I'm going to say goodbye. And remember, divided we stand. What is this again, what you have here? Which one's the public? This one here?
Yeah, well, this was during a battalion parade. There was three of us that were given, I think 3 of us were given the Silver Star. This is the general. The general was pinning the...
Who's that,
medal. I forgot his name. It's in this thing here.
Okay, what's all this stuff here? This is...
Oh, that's a Silver Star, there's a Bronze Star, and a Purple Heart. This is a Combat Infantry badge. And this is insignia, and this is nothing. This is...
and that's your card, right?
And that was my ID card.
And now, was this all from what, Belgium or whatever? When you
When I was
in the battle and all, it was Battle of Bulge, right?
It's yeah, the Battle of
great.
Bulge. Yeah, I was in the Battle of
But
Bulge
was it in Belgium at the time? Or?
in Belgium. Yeah.
Wow. Absolutely fantastic, Harold.